Today, we are pulling back the curtain on one of America's most fascinating mysteries. It's a story that's been hiding in plain sight, connecting a legendary fraternity to the creation of a world-changing democracy.
So, what if the plan for the United States wasn't just hashed out in town halls and public debates? What if it was also quietly shaped by the teachings of a brotherhood, a group of men sworn to secrecy? That's the big question we're diving into. We're going to follow the evidence, all the way from ancient manuscripts to the actual words of the Constitution, to figure out where history ends and conspiracy begins.
You know, every great building needs a blueprint. And for the United States, our search for that blueprint starts in a pretty unexpected place. Not in some dusty government archive, but inside the symbolic world of the Freemasons. But hey, before we can even start to trace that blueprint, we have to understand the architects, right? What did a Freemason in the 18th century actually believe? What was this whole fraternity thing really about?
So the Founding Fathers weren't literally laying bricks. They were what's known as speculative Masons. They used the tools of stonemasons, squares, compasses, all that, as metaphors for building a better version of themselves and a better society. And this distinction is absolutely crucial. It was a society with secrets, focused on self-improvement, not a secret society scheming for world domination.
And that personal growth was really structured. Members would work their way through 3 degrees, and each one was like a step-by-step course in philosophy. You'd start with the basics, truth, brotherhood, then you'd move on to a deep dive into the liberal arts and sciences, and it all culminated in learning about morality and fidelity. You could almost think of it as a curriculum for creating the ideal citizen of the Enlightenment.
And at the core of this curriculum were some really powerful ideas. A belief in some kind of higher power, yeah, but with complete religious tolerance for all. A deep commitment to reason and finding the truth. And, this is the big one for our story, a system built on self-governance, democratic voting, and helping each other out. Does any of that sound familiar?
Okay, so let's connect the dots. How does this philosophy actually link up with the guys who built America? Just how many of the Founding Fathers were actually wearing the Masonic apron? Well, check this out. We're talking about the heavy hitters, and they weren't just casual members. They were leaders. Benjamin Franklin was a provincial Grand Master. That's a huge regional authority. And George Washington, he was the master of his local lodge while he was president. Their commitment to this was the real deal.
And they were far from alone. Get this, historical analysis shows that a staggering 33 of the 55 delegates at the Constitutional Convention, the very men writing the document, were confirmed Masons. That is nearly 60%. Is that just a coincidence, or is it a sign of something much, much bigger?
To find out, we've got to shift from the people to the paper. I mean, if there really was an influence, you should be able to see it in the documents themselves, right? Like a kind of constitutional DNA that gets passed down. And this timeline, wow, it shows an incredible journey of ideas. It starts way back in the 14th century with basic rules for guilds. Then, in 1723, those ideas get formalized in a Masonic Constitution. A decade later, Ben Franklin himself brings it to America. It influences his early plans for the colonies, and it leads straight to the U.S. Constitution in 1787. Let's dig into this.
So the paper trail really begins right here. This is the Regius Poem from around 1390. And it wasn't just about building cathedrals. It actually laid out rights for its members, the right to assemble, to get fair wages, to have a system of self-governance. For the 14th century, these ideas were absolutely radical.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Look at the parallels. On the left, you've got the Masons' 1723 Constitution. It talks about a religion in which all men agree, which sounds a whole lot like the First Amendment's protection of religious freedom. Then there's the Masonic idea of making laws by the consent of the majority. I mean, that's basically the definition of democracy. And the idea of leaders as representatives who speak their mind? That's a direct model for Congress. The DNA is just undeniable. So the influence on the laws of the nation seems pretty clear. But what about that other popular theory, the one that says Masonic secrets are literally built into the stone and streets of Washington, D.C.?
Okay, so to get this theory, you have to know about the number 3. In Masonry, 3 is the number. It's everywhere. 3 degrees, 3 main officers, 3 great lights. It represents balance, harmony, and structure.
So one theory argues that this sacred number wasn't just a symbol. It was an actual architectural template for the new capital. The idea is that there's a recurring pattern of 3 that was deliberately encoded into the city's most famous buildings.
And you can really see what they're talking about here. On one side, you have the Lincoln Memorial, with its big central chamber and 2 wings on either side. On the other, a Masonic temple, with an almost identical 3-part design. The theory is that this isn't just a coincidence. It's a code, written in stone for all to see.
The visual similarity is, well, it's compelling, but a good investigation means we have to challenge our own ideas. So is this documented fact, or is it just a really interesting theory? Let's try to separate the proven influence from the possible conspiracy.
And this really is the million-dollar question. I mean, for there to be a deliberate Masonic code built into the city, you'd think the guy who designed it, Pierre-Charles L'Enfant, would have to be a Mason himself. So, was he?
Well, according to top Masonic historians like S. Brent Morris, the answer is a simple, straightforward no. There isn't a single shred of documentary evidence, primary or secondary, that L'Enfant was ever a Freemason. And that one little fact kind of pulls the rug out from under the whole architectural theory.
So in the end, it really comes down to this. On one side, you have a solid, well-documented paper trail showing how Masonic philosophy, its ideas about democracy and freedom, directly influenced the Constitution. And on the other side, you have a really cool theory about architecture that, while visually interesting, just doesn't have the key evidence to back up a deliberate plot.
And that really brings us to the main takeaway. Maybe the real Masonic secret wasn't some hidden code carved into buildings. Maybe it was the blueprint itself, a blueprint for a democratic society given openly to the world, hiding in plain sight for anyone to read in the U.S. Constitution.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? If a philosophy built on brotherhood and reason helped shape one of the world's most influential nations, what other hidden ideas might be built into the foundations of our modern world, just waiting for us to uncover them?